Have you ever felt betrayed by the people who were supposed to love you the most? I have. My own family didn't just reject me, they erased me from the life I was born into. They banned me from our family villa and every single asset I had a right to. At that moment, I felt the world had collapsed around me. But little did they know, I was just beginning my story of revenge. Have you ever felt like the people you trusted the most suddenly became strangers? I have. And I can tell you, it hurts more than you can imagine. I still remember that day like it was yesterday. The sun was shining, birds chirping, the kind of perfect morning that makes you think nothing could ever go wrong. And yet, in just a few words, my world collapsed. The phone rang. I answered, expecting my father's usual calm voice, maybe a casual chat about dinner plans. But instead, there was a strange coldness in his tone, a weight I couldn't place. "We've made a decision," he said, almost rehearsed. "You will no longer have any rights to the family villa or any of the family assets. Everything will go to your sister." I froze. My hands shook. My heart raced. Wait, what? I couldn't breathe. I had grown up in that villa. Every brick, every corner, every memory belonged to me as much as it did to my sister. The laughter, the late-night whispers in the garden, the smell of my mother's cooking in the kitchen, all erased in a single sentence. "This has to be a mistake," I whispered, my voice barely audible. But there was no mistake. My father's tone remained icy, unyielding. "It's final." I remember the look on my sister's face later that day. The faint smirk as if she had been waiting for this moment her whole life. And my mother. I couldn't even read her expression. It was as if I had become invisible overnight. The humiliation wasn't just in the loss, it was in the way they all acted like I didn't exist. Relatives I had known all my life, friends of the family who had visited our home countless times. Suddenly, I was a ghost. I packed a small bag. Not out of anger, no. That came later, but out of a numb, hollow shock. I walked through the villa one last time, trying to memorize every detail, knowing this chapter of my life was ending. How could they do this to me? I asked myself, tears welling up. The betrayal stung deeper than anything I had ever known. And yet, beneath the pain, a spark ignited, a small, quiet flame that would grow into something unstoppable. Because in that moment, I realized something crucial. They had underestimated me. They thought I would crumble. They thought I would beg, cry, and disappear quietly. But I had a different plan. A plan they could never see coming. And so, with my head held high and a heart full of determination, I stepped out of the villa, leaving behind a life I loved but refusing to leave behind my dignity. I didn't know exactly what the future held. But one thing was certain. This betrayal would not define me, it would fuel me. They thought they could erase me from the family. But they didn't know I was just getting started. After that day, everything felt different. The world I had known, the people I had trusted, even the walls I had called home, they were all gone. And I was left standing in the middle of my own life, completely alone. I spent the first few nights in a small rented apartment, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. Every memory of the villa haunted me: the grand staircase, the chandeliers, my childhood room with its faded wallpaper, the garden where I used to hide and read books for hours. Each memory was a knife twisting in my chest. But it wasn't just the villa. It was them, my family. How could they turn their backs on me like that? How could the people who were supposed to love me, protect me, nurture me, betray me so completely? Maybe I wasn't enough. I thought bitterly. Maybe I was too soft, too naive. Maybe I had been too trusting. I walked the city streets aimlessly, trying to lose myself in the crowd. But everywhere I went, I felt their absence like a shadow. Friends who once smiled warmly now avoided eye contact when family came up. Even strangers seemed to know I had been cast aside, and yet, in the midst of that pain, something unexpected began to grow. A quiet, burning fire of determination. A voice in my head whispered, "They made a mistake. They underestimated you, and you will prove them wrong." It started with small things. I focused on my work, pushing myself harder than ever before. I invested late nights studying business, learning finance, and planning my future. Every setback, every insult, every memory of betrayal became fuel they thought they could erase me from their world. I would repeat to myself, "But I will carve out a world they can't touch, and I will do it on my terms." I began to remember the times I had been underestimated as a child. The sneers when I succeeded in school. The dismissive comments when I tried to express my ideas. They had never believed I was capable. And now I would make them believe. It wasn't revenge yet, it was preparation. It was patience. It was building the strength and strategy that would allow me to come back stronger than they could ever imagine. I realized then that the most powerful form of revenge isn't anger or hate. I thought it's success. It's showing the world and them that you are unstoppable, no matter what they take from you. And so, I began to plan, quietly, carefully, step by step. I started building the foundation for the life they tried to steal from me. Every decision, every late-night hustle, every calculated move was another brick in my silent comeback. They thought I was gone. I whispered to myself one night, looking out at the city lights from my tiny apartment window. But they have no idea. I'm just getting started. Pain is temporary. But opportunity is forever. And I was determined to seize it, no matter how long it took. After weeks of reflection, I realized something crucial. Sitting in despair wouldn't change anything. My family had thrown me out, denied me my inheritance, and belittled me, but they could never take my intelligence, my ambition, or my resilience. I began quietly. I didn't announce my plans, didn't boast about my dreams, didn't even tell my closest friends. Every move I made was deliberate, strategic. I started small investments in businesses I understood, careful decisions that no one noticed. I read books about real estate, finance, and business empires. I reached out to mentors, some of whom laughed at first, thinking I was naive. But I didn't care. I was learning, growing, preparing. They thought I was weak, I said to myself. One night, staring at the city skyline from my modest apartment, they thought I would disappear. But I was just gathering my strength. Then came the idea that would define the next phase of my revenge. My family had always boasted about their vacations at a luxurious resort, a place where they laughed, flaunted, and made memories without me. It had always felt like a symbol of what I had lost, and suddenly, it hit me. What if I could take it from them, not by force, but by strategy? I began researching. I learned everything I could about the resort, its history, ownership, market value. I discovered it was privately owned and, incredibly, that it might soon be up for sale. My pulse quickened. If I play this right, I thought, I can own the very place they think belongs to them. I can flip the power dynamic entirely. I made my first move cautiously. I opened a business account in a new name, explored financing options, and began discreetly saving every dollar I could spare. Each night, I sketched out plans how I would negotiate the purchase, how I would ensure they never suspected it was me, how I would arrive at the resort as the one in control. Every detail mattered. Every connection I made, every risk I took, every sleepless night brought me closer to my goal. And the thought of seeing their faces, the shock, the disbelief kept me awake with excitement. I wasn't just planning revenge. I whispered to myself during a late-night session with spreadsheets and financial reports. I was planning a masterstroke. I was about to turn my pain into power, and they would never see it coming. The fire that had ignited the day they cast me out now burned brighter than ever. Every insult, every dismissal, every glance of disdain from my family had been logged in my mind. And now, I had a plan to ensure that the girl they had tried to erase would rise, not quietly, not subtly, but with undeniable force. Soon, I told myself, staring at the resort's brochure on my laptop screen, they will realize the truth. Underestimating me was their biggest mistake. Life has a funny way of giving you what you need at the exact moment you need it. And for me, that moment came when I least expected it. I had been quietly working toward my comeback for months, investing, learning, planning. Every day, the memory of my family's betrayal fueled my determination. And then, one evening, I stumbled across something that made my heart skip a beat. The resort, the very place my family flaunted as their playground, the symbol of everything I had been denied, was up for sale. At first, I thought it must be a mistake. Surely, no one would sell such a prized property. But as I dug deeper, I realized it was true. The current owner was retiring, and the opportunity was fleeting. "This is it," I whispered, unable to contain the surge of adrenaline. "This is my chance. This is how I turn the tables." I didn't waste a moment. I began researching the market value, consulting financial advisors, and exploring discreet ways to make the purchase without my family ever suspecting. Every calculation, every step had to be perfect. I couldn't afford even a single mistake. The next few weeks were a blur of negotiations, legal paperwork, and careful planning. I created a business front, a name that no one would connect to me. Every call I made, every meeting I attended, every contract I signed was done in secret. "They think I'm gone," I thought, smiling to myself one night. But soon they will realize that I was never gone. I was just preparing to reclaim everything. I imagined the moment I would finally step onto the resort grounds as its owner. The shock, the confusion, the disbelief on my family's faces, it was intoxicating. I pictured their smug smiles fading, replaced by awe and perhaps a little fear. And then the purchase was finalized. The resort was mine. Every square inch, every amenity, every corner of the property that my family had bragged about now belonged to me. I held the papers in my hands and felt a wave of triumph. I recalled later, this wasn't just about revenge. This was about proving to myself that I was capable of more than they could ever imagine. But the best part? They had no idea. Not a single clue that the girl they had cast aside had become the master of the very place they adored. The day I walked through the doors as the owner, I thought with a sly smile, will be the day they realize underestimating me was their biggest mistake. And just like that, the game had changed. The pawn had become the queen, and the board was set for a confrontation that none of them would ever forget. The day I walked through the gates of the resort as its new owner, I felt a thrill that I had never known before. Every corner, every pathway, every familiar sight that once symbolized exclusion now belonged to me. And they didn't even know it yet. I arrived early in the morning, sunlight reflecting off the pristine pools and manicured gardens. Staff members glanced at me, curious but respectful. I introduced myself as the new owner, my smile calm, confident, almost serene. I could see their hesitation, their surprise, but not a single person guessed the truth behind the name I gave them. I walked through the lobby, touching the polished surfaces, remembering all the times my family had laughed and flaunted their privilege here. Now it was mine to command. Every detail, from the linens to the landscaping, reflected my style, my vision. I had transformed a place of exclusion into a symbol of my empowerment, and then they arrived. My family, unaware that the very resort they had once flaunted as their private paradise was now under my ownership. I saw them before they saw me, I recounted later. My sister was the first to notice the shock in her eyes, the disbelief on her face. My parents followed, confusion etched into their expressions. We made a reservation, my sister stammered, her tone dripping with hesitation, as if expecting some mistake. I smiled sweetly, the kind of smile that disarms and unnerves at the same time. Of course, I said, calm and composed. Welcome to your stay. The look on their faces was priceless. The arrogance, the entitlement. They had thought this resort was untouchable, theirs by birthright. And now, every expectation they had about me, about my place in their lives, was shattered. I walked them through the property, showing off improvements I had made, pointing out details they hadn't even noticed. I remained polite, cordial, even generous, but every gesture reinforced the truth. I was in control. They had always looked down on me, dismissed me, erased me. I thought, watching their expressions shift from smug superiority to uneasy admiration. Now, they had to acknowledge me, and that acknowledgement was sweeter than any revenge I could have imagined. Throughout the day, I let them underestimate me, smiling while they whispered doubts to one another, trying to figure out how this had happened. Little did they know, the very girl they had thrown out had orchestrated every detail, every decision, every move. By the evening, as the sun set over the horizon and the resort glowed in golden light, I realized something. Revenge wasn't about humiliation. It wasn't about anger or punishment. Revenge, in its purest form, was power, and I had taken it flawlessly. And this, I whispered to myself, watching their confused faces, is only the beginning. I knew this day would come, the moment I would see the faces of the people who had cast me aside, the people who had tried to erase me, and show them that I was no longer powerless. It happened that evening, after dinner. The resort glowed under warm lights, the air carrying the scent of blooming flowers and fresh ocean breeze. My family had gathered in the lounge, their conversation hesitant, their usual arrogance replaced with unease. My sister approached me first, her voice trembling slightly. We didn't know. How is this possible? I smiled, a calm, controlled smile. Not a hint of anger. Not a trace of desperation, just quiet, undeniable authority. Everything you see, I said softly, is mine. I made it happen. Every decision, every detail, all of it. My parents exchanged glances, guilt flickering across their faces. My father opened his mouth to speak, but I held up a hand. Save your explanations. I don't need them. I don't need apologies. What matters is that I am standing here, exactly where I belong, stronger than ever, unshaken, unafraid. There was a pause, heavy with tension. My sister tried again. This Time sharper, more defensive. We raised you. We gave you everything you needed. I laughed softly, shaking my head. No, you gave me nothing but doubt and rejection. Everything I achieved, every step I took, I did on my own. You tried to erase me, and yet I rose above. And that is the difference between us. I could see it in their eyes, the realization, the creeping fear, the regret. For the first time, I was the one in control of the narrative. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to argue. My success, my presence, my ownership of the resort said it all. You underestimated me, I whispered, my voice calm but sharp. And that was your biggest mistake. My sister's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. My mother looked away, unable to meet my gaze. My father finally spoke, a quiet, almost defeated tone. We didn't realize. Exactly, I said, cutting him off gently. You didn't realize. And now it's too late. The world doesn't wait for apologies, and neither do I. But I will give you one thing: respect for being here, as guests, in a place that I now own. I could see the conflict in their eyes, the desire to assert dominance, the urge to argue, the sting of seeing me succeed. Yet, no words they could muster would change the truth. I was no longer powerless. That night, I walked through the resort alone, the moonlight reflecting off the water. I let myself feel the weight of what I had accomplished, the betrayal I had endured, the plan I had executed, the victory I had earned. They thought they could break me, I whispered to the empty night, but all they did was make me stronger. And now, I hold the power. Weeks passed, and life at the resort settled into a rhythm, my rhythm. Every day, I watched the people who had once dismissed me adjust to the reality they had tried so hard to ignore. And I realized this wasn't just revenge. This was justice, tempered with the wisdom I had gained along the way. My family stayed for a week, each day revealing more cracks in their arrogance. They tried to act normal, to recapture some sense of control, but I remained calm, composed, always a step ahead. I smiled, guided them politely through the property, and quietly demonstrated my competence. It was fascinating to watch, I thought. They had treated me as inferior for years, and now every decision, every gesture I made, reminded them who I truly was. My sister finally confronted me one afternoon, frustration bubbling to the surface. How did you even pull this off? I looked at her, eyes steady, voice soft but firm. I planned, I worked, I didn't waste time complaining or blaming. Everything I have now, I earned. You had your chance to support me, or at least not betray me. You didn't. But I didn't need you. I only needed myself. The silence that followed was thick with realization. My parents' faces softened, a mixture of regret and pride mingling in their expressions. I could see it, their understanding that they had underestimated me, and their recognition of the woman I had become. I didn't gloat. I reflected later. Because victory isn't about humiliation. It's about proving your worth to yourself first. And I was finally free from their expectations, from their judgments, from the past that had tried to hold me back. I walked the resort at sunset, the ocean glimmering like liquid gold. The place that had once been a symbol of exclusion was now a testament to my resilience, my intelligence, my power. And in that moment, I felt a profound sense of closure. I forgave them not because they asked for it, not because they deserved it, but because holding on to anger would only chain me to the past. I whispered to the wind. I reclaimed my life, my assets, my dignity. And that is the ultimate revenge. The lesson was clear. Betrayal can hurt, but it can also ignite the fire within. Pain can be transformed into strength, underestimation into triumph. And when you rise not with bitterness but with grace, the world has no choice but to acknowledge you. I walked away that day not just as the owner of the resort, but as the architect of my destiny. And that feeling is worth more than any villa, any inheritance, any approval I could have ever sought. If there's one thing I've learned from this journey, it's this: betrayal can hurt, but it can also teach you your true strength. Being underestimated, cast aside, or dismissed is not the end of your story. It can be the beginning of your greatest triumph. I faced the people who tried to erase me. I turned their arrogance, their betrayal, and their doubt into fuel. And in the end, I didn't just reclaim what was mine, I created something bigger, something that no one could ever take away. Revenge isn't about hurting others, I thought. It's about proving to yourself that you are unstoppable. It's about taking control of your life, your destiny, and your power. To anyone watching this story, remember, your value is never defined by those who try to diminish you. The setbacks, the betrayal, the doubt, they can all become your stepping stones to success. Rise, fight smart, and reclaim what's rightfully yours, sometimes in ways they will never see coming. And for those who are still waiting for their moment, don't wait. Plan, prepare, and when the time comes, take it all. Because your destiny is yours alone. If my story inspired you, hit that like button. Subscribe for more dramatic and empowering family stories, and share it with anyone who's ever been underestimated. Remember, I said softly, smiling at the horizon, your strength is your revenge, and your success is your story. Now go write yours. Thanks for watching. Hoped you liked it. If you watched till the end, please comment revenge, so that we could understand you were with us till the end. As well as, please let us know, where are you watching from? What do you want to hear from us in next video? If you have any incident in your life, please let us know. We would love to share your story. Before leaving, please hit the subscribe button, comment your thought, and share with your nearest and dearest one. See you in the next one. Until to the next one, stay happy.